Presiding over the case 2025-001, Richard C. Jones v. Lumbee Tribal Council, Judges Emily Dees, Ronette Sutton, Tona Jacobs, Eric Freeman, and Chief Justice Mark Brooks.
You may be seated. As has been our custom, we're going to Do I need to go back to this for the record? Okay. This is Richard C. Jones versus Lumbee Tribal Council. Let me just say good evening one more time. On behalf of the Supreme Court, my name is Mark Brooks. In a moment, we'll go through some housekeeping matters. I'm going to ask all the members of the court to introduce themselves and state which community they are from. Again, my name is Mark Brooks. I am from the Pembroke community, and I'm going to start with my left.
Eric Freeman, Prospect Community.
Ronette Sutton, Philadelphia Community.
Tona Jacobs, Hope County.
Emily Dees, Pembroke Community.
I'm going to ask the parties to introduce themselves and which community that they are representing.
Tanaka, Richard Jones, District 6.
Albert Baker, Speaker of the Tribal Council, District 13, Cumberland County.
Okay. Thank you both. At this time, we're going to invite both parties, if they are aware of any conflicts or potential conflicts or perceived conflicts that they believe that any of the justices have, they are welcome to publicly state those for the record. Mr. Jones, we'll start with you.
I'm just a little concerned the way our great Supreme Court justices were sworn in. If everybody's confident with that, I understand this was done over the phone. In the past, it was done in chambers. I just want to make sure we're not wasting everybody's time and then somebody bring this back.
Duly noted.
I have no concerns about any of the justices at this time. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Jones, would you like to elaborate on your concern as it relates to the remote swearing in? I would say, for the record, you are correct. There was a remote swearing in.
Just that it's not written. I read through, I heard it was a remote swearing in. I read through everything. I don't see where there's policy for that or against it.
Yes.
It's just that in the past, we've always done it in chambers, and I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with it. If that's going to be I'm fine with it. I just don't want it. We go through this and then someone bring it back up.
Yes. I think that's a very fair concern, Mr. Jones. I will say, we did exercise some remote swearing-ins during COVID, and we did that because of proximity concerns and quarantine concerns. The two new justices that's on the court, Ms. Ronette Sutton, Ms. Emily Dees, they were confirmed by the Tribal Council on Thursday evening. They were not available for Thursday evening. I was aware that this tribal hearing was coming up tonight. I thought that it would be great if we could have a full court, to hear this. I think the court's better served. I think the Lumbee people are better served by having 5 justices to hear the matter. So there was a remote swearing in on Friday evening. The court administration put together sort of a last minute WebEx for us to be able to do that. These justices would affirm, and I would ask both justices to affirm on the record that they have been duly sworn in, if they would.
Yes, I affirm.
Yes, I affirm.
Thank you both. Would that alleviate your concern, Mr. Jones?
It just seems like it's a kind of a double standard. It's fine for the Supreme Court justices to do things remotely, but our citizens can't even come to a community meeting remotely. Just making that noted.
I understand. It's respected. Is that the only concern that you have? Does the speaker have any concerns?
No, Chief Justice.
You've already stated that.
That's
Thank you.
correct. None at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, we would invite you at this time, if you would like to just give us a opening argument as to why you're here, what's the basis for your petition, and what relief you would like to receive.
Your Honor, and other Supreme Court justices, members of the court, and everybody here today, I stand before you as a concerned Lumbee citizen who believes in fairness, accountability, and following the rules that govern our tribe. This case is about one simple thing. Our tribal council is breaking the rules set by our own constitution, and that cannot be allowed. Our constitution clearly states that council members must live in the districts that they represent. This rule exists to make sure every district has a representative who truly understands and speaks for the people living there. But right now, we have council members who do not live in their districts that they were elected to represent. That is a clear violation of our Constitution. On top of that, our Constitution also has strict rules for our vacant council seats, how they should be filled. If a seat becomes empty for it, the Constitution, Article 7, Section 7, A and B, says if any council seat becomes vacant for any reason, the vacant seat has to be filled by the rules of 7A and B, respectively. The council must hold a public, and then the council must hold a public hearing if that seat is vacant within 1 year. Right now, there are 3 empty council seats, and the tribal council has not followed these rules to fill them. Instead, they have created an ordinance that tries to override the Constitution, ignoring the rules that protect fair representation for all tribal members. This is not just unfair, it is unconstitutional. The tribal council does not have the power to rewrite the Constitution whenever they feel like it. If this is allowed, what stops them from ignoring other rules in the future? Today, we ask the court to do what is right, enforce the Constitution, and make sure that the tribal council follows the rules. That means only council members who actually live in their district should be allowed to serve. The 3 vacant seats must be filled using the process written in the Constitution, either by special election or public hearings, depending on how much time is left in their term. This case is about fairness, following the law, and making sure that the voices of our people are heard. We ask the court to stand up for the Lumbee Constitution and make sure our tribal council does too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Speaker, would you care to respond?
Thank you, Chief Justice. The petitioner alleged that there are vacant seats upon the tribal council. The council disputes that claim. The council currently has 21 tribal council members and 21 districts. So I'm unaware of any vacant seats that are had. There are 3 districts due to redistricting, and redistricting has been a thorn for this tribe. We have gone through 2-decade censuses And this is the first time in 20-some years that the council has successfully been able to draw district maps. In doing the balance as required of equal representation by this Constitution, it became apparent that with having districts with multiple representatives, some with 2, some with 3, that this would be challenging and preserving Lumbee communities, not splitting up Wakulla, not splitting up Prospect, not splitting up Hope County, not splitting up those traditional Indian communities. Council did consider what our authority was when it came. We did not feel that we could remove duly elected representatives, as the Constitution is clear. The petitioner cited in his response Article 7, Section 2, Article 7, Section 7, tribal council members can only be removed per this Constitution by failure to attend 3 consecutive meetings. We lack the authority to remove each other for other reasons besides that. The Constitution is clear. And so we'd had to devise a way that maintained our communities, that maintained equal representation, while also honoring the duly elected representatives. And so this ordinance does that. It is clear that in the ordinance that the tribal council did not consider these seats vacant because all 21 were held. However, we had to devise a way that allowed for those seats to become available for election. And this ordinance does that, as all 3 seats will become available for election for people who reside in those districts this November. But we felt that we did not have the authority, either constitutionally or by ordinance, to remove a sitting council member who had done nothing wrong according to the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Jones, do you have any witnesses that you intend to call other than yourself?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you prepared to offer testimony at this time for each individual claim that you're making?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Roller, would you affirm?
Yes, sir. Please hold your right hand up. I do solemnly and sincerely and truly declare, to the best of my knowledge, that the evidence I'm about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Do you affirm?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Jones, if you would begin, you made a number of claims in your opening remarks. If you would begin with the first one, and just state your claim and then state the evidence that you have in support of that claim.
After reaching out to several people, I've been made aware that this ordinance was made to help protect a council member, Ms. Chakawana, who lives in 18, but resides in 11, and they still got her down for 11. But she should be like District 2, District 3, and District 20 with 2 people in a district. That's my first claim, I think. And that's the only one, that's the first one that I actually found that's not listed.
Can you give us a moment just to review that, Mr. Jones? So your claim as it relates to Council Lady Oxendine, is that?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Could you restate particularly what the claim is that you're making?
My
as well, sir?
claim is that she resides in District 18, but serves the people of District 11.
And your position is that that is as current as the new maps have been drawn?
Yes.
Can you state then the implication of that as you see it?
That would mean District 11 would be vacant. And also, it's against the Constitution to reside in one area and serve in another.
Would it be your position that there are other members on the tribal council who are in a similar position to Ms. Oxenine?
Just 100% like hers, I'm not sure, sir,
Okay.
but I have a second case to make about having two members in the same district, which leaves vacant, but that's another point.
Would it be fair to say that your general concern is that there are current members on the tribal council who were elected to particular districts that they no longer reside in?
Yes, sir.
And that there are newly created districts that they are representing, but they don't reside in those districts either?
No, I've got something else on that. I'm saying on that second part, that those empty districts have no one on the council that reside in them.
Okay. As it relates to Miss Oxenine, Council Lady Oxenine, living in District 11, was District 11 her original district that she was elected to?
Well, a lot of us, I'm not sure, sir.
Okay.
Based on the switching of the map, you can't, it's difficult to even read the maps.
In fairness, Mr. Jones, I think that it's important. One of the reasons why it's important for this court to hold this hearing is so that we can answer questions like that. I think you raise
Yes, sir.
a really
That's
good
exactly
question, and those are things that hopefully amongst three of us we can come to some resolution as to what is true and what isn't true. Okay. You have a second claim that you'd like to make?
Well, I just want to make sure now, I'm saying that Ms. Chakawana resides in 18 but serves in 11.
She resides in 18,
But serves 11.
serves in 11.
Serves 11, yes.
Is District 18,
District 18 has Mr. Larry Souls.
so District 18 is being represented currently?
Yes, it is by two people. Well, according to our paperwork that's going out,
Okay.
what the tribe says,
Which district do you allege is not being represented?
I'm saying that also 11, but as well as 15, 17, and 21.
But you stated that she lives in District 11.
No, I'm sorry. If I said that, I apologize. I'm stating that she lives in 18, but is listed serving District 11.
Okay, I understand now.
Custom-
Would she have previously resided in District 11?
If that number did not change in Hope County, yes.
Yes, okay. Do you
If 11 was the previous Hope County district.
know who the current tribal council member is who is representing District 11 currently?
According to the tribe, Chakawana represents it,
But you
but
say,
she doesn't live there.
okay.
This ordinance says by redistricting that she can stay there according to this ordinance. But this ordinance cannot supersede the Constitution.
Do you have a further claim that you wish to make, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can proceed.
Okay. Districts 15, 17, and 21 are vacant. Constitution says for any reason they become vacant. The tribal council says that it was painful doing this, but it was done in 2 to 3 months. It's when that don't sound painful to me. I don't see how in 2 to 3 months you can get out and know the ending, do this in the right way. They should have known they made a mistake when they had a hard time getting judges and doing the other appointees because the districts got mixed up. Then it should have been somebody should have stopped right then. No community involvement was held. They won't let you even speak at the meetings unless you're in community comments, and according to the parliamentarian in the meeting the other night, they don't have to speak back. This is why we're here today. Constitution says I didn't make these districts up. They made the districts up. They should have known right then when they made them up and they were vacant. The Constitution says for any reason.
So to your larger point, you are alleging that the ordinance as written is unconstitutional, at least because it created districts in which persons currently seated on the tribal council do not reside in. And for that reason, they've created a unconstitutional ordinance.
Yes. And it says, and even in their ordinance, I'll get to it. Whereas in those districts who lack a council member residing in such district, the current council member currently residing, representing that district, will remain their representative until the expiration of their current terms. First of all, it says that district it just got made, so how was anyone ever in it? And second, I reached out to to make sure I reached out to the elections board. Not one tribal council member lives in 15, 17, or 21.
Can you show us on the ordinance where you're reading that from,
Um,
Mr. Jones?
It's their ordinance CLLO 2024-04 18-01 at the very bottom, the last two
Okay.
whereas.
Okay, that's loaded.
In I would like to say this from our speaker. 2 times this has sort of come up. In the very beginning, when the tribe just got started, there was a group that formed all this. And when a group was elected, they had to draw straws to see who was going to serve 1 term, 2 term, or 3. 1 year, a 2-year term, or a 3-year. So it could be staggered. Okay, that's one time they made some tough decisions. The second time is when we went from, I think it was 25 districts or 23 or something down to 21. Somebody was cut out. When they went to 21, somebody was cut out. So that has happened.
When you say that,
Well, someone was no longer a tribal representative.
when do you say that they went to 21 and when someone was cut out? Is that recent or is that years ago?
Years ago.
Is there a third claim that you wish to make, Mr. Jones?
I also would like to state on the tribe's website, they have vacant seats. It says vacant seats, as well as the election board website, the seats are says vacant. So, and they say they divided this up with, my understanding, for numbers sake, 2,000 people per district. If this is the case, there's 6,000 people out there without representation. When they drew these maps, I understand it was using numbers that were lower than what should be done. I just think this is just the beginning of the mess that's been made by this tribal council.
Is it possible, Mr. Roller, to get a list of the existing tribal council members in their districts? Is there a place to access that on the tribal website or?
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's a tribal council page on the website that shows each council member and what district
I'm
they
looking
represent.
at a tribal council page, and am I looking at the right one where it says District 1, District 2, District 3, but you have to click on it to see?
Let me make sure, Chief Justice. Let me pull it up with you here, and I'll tell you the exact page to go to. Under the government page, Chief Justice, if you scroll down to legislative branch, it has each council member and their district.
Could you forward that to me right quick, and I'll forward that to the.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones, just for clarification, so all of these seats that we're speaking of, none of these folks physically moved. The districts were drawn from under them. Is that correct? So we're not talking about anybody that moved out of their district physically?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, there's a roll call sheet that is, Justice Sutton has pointed out to me, that's in the packet involving the ordinance. Do you have access to that roll call sheet? I believe it may be the 4th page in that packet.
Chief Justice, can I make one more statement?
Yes.
I'm looking at the Lumbee Tribe Elections Board sheet where they've got it listed who's up for election in 24, 25, and 26, and if certain representatives can run or not. So in 25, it has District 7 with Miss Siobhan Dow and she has 2 stars beside her name. I'm just bringing her name up as for an example, and that means those 2 stars mean that she's not eligible to run again. But within that, in this block of 25, the districts that will be up for vote will be District 15, 17, and 21. Well, within those other people that, other council that can run, Miss Christy Hunt is listed on there. But Miss Christy Hunt right now shares a district with District 20. And District 20 is not even listed on 25. And she doesn't live in 15, 17, or 21. So I don't know, that in itself seems to be a problem.
Were you able to find that roll call sheet?
Oh, yes, yes, sir, I do.
You were, okay. I'm gonna ask you some questions about it, okay? And I don't expect you to know everything about it, but just to get your perspective on it. Looking at that, does it appear to you that that is a roll call that reflects the 14 tribal district territory prior to the adoption of the 21 tribal districts?
Yes, it does. It's the 14, it's listed as 14 districts.
And that, addressing the earlier point that you made about Council Lady Oxendine, it appears that it reflects that she represented District 11 at that time.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
that may answer the question that I asked you earlier of if whether or not she, and you're, let's go back and I don't want to be confusing, but you indicated that she now resides in District 18.
Yes, with the new maps.
And you're not aware of anyone representing District 11?
They wrote this ordinance so she could stay in District 11,
Okay,
but she lives in District 18.
okay. Do you know when her term expires?
2026. According to the elections boards.
If she resides in District 18, what would have been, and I think we're allowing some liberties here because you were honest and said this is what you understood. You had heard this. If that's true, and she lives in District 18, what would be the goal to allow her to remain living in District 11? Or serve in District 11?
Are you asking me for an assumption? Is that, I'm assuming why they done that?
Yes.
Because because that's Hope County. I mean, before the redistricting, when you said Hope County, you knew where Hope County was. If you say Mount Elam,
Yeah.
you say Hope County. Now, Mount Elam's in Scotland's district.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming to keep from losing a Hope Countyan, or just actually maybe doing some right work and be able to keep her, to keep from losing her, that's why they did not want to go to her and say, I'm sorry, we got to, either you live and move to number 11, what's now 11, or we write an ordinance. That's what I'm assuming. But I'm also assuming that when they were done these redistrictings, that it was gerrymandering. That's a whole nother thing. Now there's going to be 2 people from Hope County on this council. I've got no problem. I'm from Hope County. I love Hope County. But I know one thing. When you say Mount Edom, you don't say Scotland District. You say Hope County.
Speaker Baker, it may be hard for us to be able to come to a consensus on what is true. I hope we can get to a consensus on what is true. But I'd like for you to be able to respond to Mr. Jones's claims one at a time. As it relates to his claim about Council Lady Oxendine, what would you say to those claims?
I'm happy to address that, Chief Justice in court. Unfortunately, I apologize. I've had to scurry and do like the court has and do some surfing on the web here as we conduct this, because in the petition that I was served, I only have 3 alleged violations.
Yes.
Residency is not one of those that were alleged. So I'm afraid I'm at a disadvantage because the petitioner's complaint that I received states a violation of Article 7, Section 7B, that if a seat becomes vacant for any reason more than 1 calendar year, then his second violation is a special election be held, and then third, the newly elected tribal member shall serve out the remainder of the term. So in my petition, I didn't see residency, but I'm happy to address it.
I think it's fair to say that Mr. Jones's petition was not very specifically pled, and that's not a slight against you, Mr. Jones. I think that there were some assumptions that were made in your pleadings, and I think in fairness to both parties, what Speaker Baker is saying is true, but I do believe that it's possible that what you've alleged as it relates to Council Lady Oxendine may very well be the basis for why your first allegation there could or could not be true. You've alleged that if a tribal council seat becomes vacant for any reason, and I think that what you've alleged is that Council Lady Oxendine previously resided in District 11, but now she resides in District 18. And I think that you've alleged that to say that that has left District 11 for all intents and purposes vacant. Am I accurate, or do I have some of that mixed up?
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
If you go by the Constitution.
As it relates to that, Speaker Baker, if that's Mr. Jones's contention, that I see the argument that you're making is that it appears to be a residency requirement. I think what Mr. Jones is saying is that prior to the adoption of this ordinance, Ms. Oxendine represented District 11. Since then, she still is considered the representative of District 11, but she resides in District 18. As it relates to that,
Sure.
do you have a position of whether or not that's true?
So I'm also on the tribe's website, and I looked under Tribal Council, under Tribal Government, click the Tribal Council tab, and then I go and it lists 1 through 21. If I hit District 11, which was previously Hope County, and it's still Hope County.
Okay.
Then it shows that Ms. Chakawada Oxendine is the duly elected representative. If I go to District 18, which is added, so this map must be updated because prior to this we only had 14. That representative is Miss Mary Locklear. Miss Mary Locklear, who is indeed the representative for District 18, is from the Wakulla and Prospect community.
Okay.
So I dispute the alleged allegation made here this evening that Chakawada is not outside her district, that Ms. Chakawada is indeed within District 11, which is Hope County, was there before the redraw and is there after the redraw. District 18 is represented by Prospect and Wakulla, and that representative is Miss Mary Locklear.
So it's your position that Council Lady Oxendine resides in District 11 still and is still the representative of District 11?
Which would be Hope County, that's correct, yes.
And that Mary Locklear is the current representative of District 18 And she in fact resides in District 18,
That's correct.
and that Ms. Oxendine does not reside in District 18.
That's correct.
Do you have any evidence, Mr. Jones, to support your claim that Ms. Oxendine resides in District 18?
I do not, sir.
And you were very honest, and when you said that that was what you were told that.
Yes, yes.
I don't necessarily think that it means that your claim won't stand on the basis of that, because in fairness, if all of us are looking at that tribal website, you have alleged in your opening remarks that District 15, 17, and 21 are vacant. And I believe that maybe what you're looking at, Speaker, indicates the same wording, that District 15, 17, and 21 are vacant. Whether or not that's due to Council Lady Oxendine or not, may not be the case, but it appears that they are vacant. Would you dispute that?
I would. Words mean something, Your Honor, and we have shied and intentionally not used vacant.
Yes.
Because the landmass, while district changed, landmass did not. And we are elected to represent people by the landmass. It is correct that in 2003, tribal council members did lose seat, but that is in accordance with the powers enumerated within the document itself. The membership, which is a right reserved strictly through membership, the membership decided to change the territory. And when the membership decided to change the territory, that in effect ended those tribal council members who were worldwide, living outside of the 4 counties, whether they lived at the beach, whether they lived in the mountains, or whether they lived in Tokyo. The members are the ones that did that, and that is a power reserved strictly for them.
How did the members do that?
They did that through our only constitutional amendment, which can be found at the back of your...
Would you dispute that, Mr. Jones?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. Agreeing that words do matter, you wouldn't dispute that the tribal website uses the word vacant to describe districts 15, 17, and 21.
And that will be my first call to my counterparts in the other branches to get that terminology correctly, because that is not how the tribal council sees that, nor how we wrote the law and executed the law. Our stance is that they are filled seats. There may be underrepresented, but they have a representative, and those council members for District 15, 17, and 21 are still delivering hams to their constituents. They're still having meetings with those constituents, and they're still taking their concerns about tribal programs and advocating for their cause at the tribal office.
Your position is that the word vacant is not used in the ordinance.
Council does not see these seats as vacant.
Okay.
We have 21 positions that have been duly elected. There are no vacant seats on the tribal council.
And your request would be that this court not hold the council to the words or the language used on the tribal website that is not administered by the tribal council.
That is correct. That is administered by a separate branch, and then the election board is an independent body. And so both of those branches can neither be compelled by the tribal council.
I think we can get past a lot of the potential differences if we at least get a stipulation to this point. Would you agree, as Speaker on behalf of the council, that the persons currently representing districts 15, 17, and 21 do not currently reside in those districts?
You are correct in that, yes, Your Honor. And we have debated that. I cannot find where the Constitution dictates that members must continue to reside, and we have grappled with this. In Article 7, Section 2, it outlines what must be applicable for a member to be eligible to run for office. And you must have maintained your principal residency in the particular council district for a term no less than a preceding year. But the Constitution is silent on whether that must be maintained, and should it be maintained when districts are redrawn. And the Constitution does speak to our constitutional requirement of when we must withdraw them and how we must withdraw them, But it is silent to what happens as to how to we withdraw them when we weren't one seat, one district to begin with. Again, we went from 14 to the constitutional mandate of 21. And when you have multiple people in the same district, either someone's going to have to be removed or someone's going to have to represent. Either way, we'd have stepped out of bounds, and so where was the greatest grievance? And we tried to stay away from the greatest grievance. Do we automatically assume that we have the authority to remove the people's representative as they were duly elected? Or do we continue to ensure one man, one vote and allow them to come off? Because this court has defined a term as 3 years. I do acknowledge the petitioner's statement that the Constitution dictated to that first council by some random chance they must pick one third of the council, 7 members for a 1-year term, 7 members for a 2-year term, and 7 members for a 3-year term to institute staggered boards. But that directive was only applicable to that first council, and council maintains we do not have that authority as outlined by this court to redefine what a term is. This court has held that a term is 3 years, and so absent of any other instruction from the Constitution, we don't think we have the privilege to shorten my term, Ms. Chakawana's term, or any other council member's term to less than that term.
Mr. Jones, or you're not persuaded?
That was a bunch of fluff. I'm not persuaded by no means. They wrote it. They wrote it in their own ordinance. They messed it all up. It's just messed up.
What did they mess up when you say that
When they went in, number one, they talk about, oh, we don't want to split up Indian communities. They went right down Clyburn Pines and put Clyburn Pines in 2 different districts. In his own words, they said they weren't going to, and that's what they've done. They did not take the time. They did not take the time and the effort, and they got all this money, and they could have done this right. It had to be remapped. It had to be remapped. But when you remap something and you mark people out, somebody's got to make some tough decisions. You should have went to them and said, look, the way we're doing this, somebody's going to it's going to be a vacant seat, and we can't have 2 people in one. We got to figure out something, either redo it before they come to us, redo it. Let's go to the community. Let's go to the community. None of that.
In fairness, Mr. Jones, there's no redistricting that draws 21 districts out of the tribal territory that's previously 14. That's not going to disgruntle someone.
Exactly.
So, to use your words, a difficult decision, if true, could very well be splitting Clyburn Pines. Could that be a difficult decision?
No, if they would have done something like that in some of these other communities, they would have been in uproar. But for some reason, I guess they didn't. But I can't understand why, if people with 2 people in a district, why couldn't it been split 2 ways? Find a way to help within the community. I got a couple examples on that. People with 3 districts. If we'd have just split those people split them 3 ways, find a way to do it. If might have to absorb something around them to help make the numbers right, but to totally remap the way our districts were to what it is now.
What about to Speaker Baker's point that the Constitution is silent on a person maintaining their residency during the duration of their term? What would you say to that?
They are the ones. Our Constitution has set this in place. So when we decide to do redistricting, if they'd have read it, they would have said, hey, by us doing this is leaving seats vacant. It was there for them to go by.
You've heard Speaker Baker's position that they disagree with the term vacancy, and I think, based on what I heard from Speaker Baker, that because they are newly formed tribal seats without previous representation, that the absence of a person residing in that district is not a vacancy. Would you agree that that's the council's position? Well, have I stated the council's position on that correctly, accurately? They contest the use of the word vacancy to describe the absence of persons in districts 15, 17, and 21. What do you say as it relates to their position that those aren't vacant seats because these are newly created tribal territories that have not had previous representation, and so the absence of representation is not a vacancy?
No, I don't agree to that.
Would
I
your
don't-
position?
That's not new.
Would your position be that a person elected to the tribal council who moves outside of that district, would it be your position that that creates a vacancy?
That's when we've had that before, and they've allowed it. I don't think it's right, but they have allowed, if someone moved on their own choice, moved out. This group in there, they made these boundaries. They knew that these seats, whether, I don't care what kind of word you want to use, they knew that no one on the council, someone on one of the 21 would live within that territory, and they're in another, that would be their district then.
Would you agree that there was a mandate on the council to create a 21 district tribal territory?
A mandate that they drug around for 22 years.
And
And then even when we talked about it in the new millennium, they still drug around. And then all of a sudden they can do it in 2 months. It just doesn't seem hurry up. I mean, they waited all this time and then done it like that.
you don't dispute that a 21 district tribal territory is constitutional.
No, I'm not disputing that at all.
You've previously served on a 14 district
On a 14 in that.
tribal council territory. So you believe that the effort to enact a 21 tribal council territory was the correct action, you just believe that it was done hastily?
I think it was done hastily and the way they done it's against the Constitution. What's happened is now it's against the Constitution.
Speaker Baker, I don't believe that what we're deciding here tonight is whether or not the tribal council has acted hastily in drafting this. I do believe that the court is hearing, though, whether or not these districts 15, 17, and 21, it appears that both parties have stipulated that these are districts who are currently being represented by persons who do not currently reside in those districts. Your position on behalf of the tribal council is that that does not create automatic vacancies.
As cited by the Lumbee custom, just by the petitioner. I've been very cautious as not to implicate privacy rights of tribal members, as these two members are now tribal members and no longer members of council. But by the testimony we've heard this afternoon, there is precedent and there is Lumbee custom that tribal council members have resided outside of that territory before. And so that, yes, Your Honor, prior to us usurping the authority that we do not have in removing a duly elected council member, we followed the traditional custom of the Lumbee people, which is one of our tenets that we're supposed to when we apply law. Federal law and then tribal law underneath the Constitution.
Is Ms. Chakawana here tonight? She's not here. Ms. Chakawana, if you're listening, we apologize that your name has been used for so many illustrative purposes, but I believe that it's helpful. I don't believe that Mr. Jones has implicated you to malign you in any way. I think he's just used you for illustrative purposes. So if you're listening, we do not wish to impugn your name in any way. Does any of the other justices have any remarks or questions?
Chief.
Feel free to address the court.
So why, in all the paperwork that this wonderful tribe has, it says vacant? Who do the people know to go to?
Which
I mean,
which paperwork are you referring to, Mr. Jones?
The tribal's website and election boards. If people want to know who their rep is, where do they go? If vacant's not the word to use, well then why didn't they appoint someone? Hey, if you need anything, this would be your rep until the election, who used to be in the area nearby, something. But there's nothing but the word vacant.
You would agree, you would not dispute that the word vacant is not used in the ordinance.
I will not dispute that because it says the 3 new districts without a seated council member
And you would not,
residing in the district.
you wouldn't dispute that the ordinance is available to the public through the tribal website.
Correct, I won't dispute that.
If I may. And you would not dispute that the people living in those districts now are being represented by their duly elected representative, but a different district.
I dispute that. They're not being represented.
Is it your contention that this ordinance is unconstitutional because it creates districts that are not being represented?
Correct.
And Mr. Baker, is it your contention that in writing the ordinance, you felt you could not put representatives in those districts without them being in conflict with the Constitution?
That's correct. The Constitution is clear that we will have 21 tribal council members. To do as it's been suggested would result in a tribal council with 24. And so then I would have violated, and the council and the committee would have violated the Constitution by having 24 and not to prescribe 21 members.
It seems that the tribal council was put in a position of violating the Constitution either direction they went.
We seen our only recourse, Your Honor, in the path that we chose, in the fact that there is a custom, Lumbee custom, that allowed a tribal council member to continue to represent the district that they had reside and qualified for prior to accept the oath of office. They continued to represent those districts after they moved. It was never challenged. It was never struck down. And so with that custom intact in place, we chose the most appropriate venue and action without usurping authority that we did not have, violating the Constitution directly, but while upholding Lumbee custom and rule.
So by using the Lumbee custom, you were able to, if I can use your words, avoid the greater grievance.
That is correct. Because my contention is that had we done this when the petitioner was a member of the tribal council, and then 20 of us looked at Richard and said, petitioner, you're going to have to resign your seat, then the case would be much differently argued today. I think I would be in court today defending that I had usurped authority that I did not have and tried to remove a duly elected representative.
And it's your contention, in disagreement with the petitioner, that those districts are being represented now?
That is correct, madam. The land mass has not changed, and each one of us were elected derived by the land mass and the number of people in those last land masses. So while the boundaries, while the lines may have transgressed, the representation is still incumbent upon the land mass. And so those three, and I'm happy to call a witness tonight, Mr. Graylin Mitchell is along with Mr. Gerald Goolsby is one of those two members that represent another district, and they do not reside in that district. And Mr. Graylin Mitchell is here tonight, and he can testify that he is still serving those members, although they're in technically an underrepresented district. He is still providing services to them. He is still taking phone calls and addressing their concerns. He is still reaching out to the tribal office to make inquiries about their applications and their services.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, it would seem to me, looking at your petition and looking at the second page of your petition, particularly number 1, you cite Article 7, Section 7B, if a tribal council seat becomes vacant for any reason, and more than 1 calendar year remains in the term of the vacant seat, then a special election shall be conducted to fill the vacancy. Looking at that recitation of that ordinance or that clause in the Constitution, it would seem to me that we first have to be persuaded as a court that a vacancy has been created in districts 15, 17, and 21. I think if we are, as a court, convinced that there is a vacancy that's been created, I think that then we would have to be convinced that the remedy for that vacancy would be a special election. If we're not convinced that this is a vacancy, we don't get to the question of whether or not a special election should be conducted. What do you say as it relates to the second part of that clause that says more than 1 calendar year remains in the term of the vacant seat? As we sit here today, would you say that more than 1 year remains in the term of these seats 15, 17, and 21?
According to the elections board, it's not. When they done it, it was, but at the current time, it's not. These, according to the elections board, 15, 17, and 21 are up for election this year.
So what's the remedy? Is there a remedy if there is less than 1 year remaining in the term when there's a vacancy? So if we were to stipulate, if Speaker Baker said, yes, we stipulate these are vacancies, but because there's less than 1 year remaining in the term, does that require a remedy?
Yes, it does. In the Constitution, it says it, that you will appoint someone.
Okay.
7, what's this? Article 7, Section 7, A. 1 calendar year remains. The tribal council scale and the advertising cut a public hearing in this district seat. If it's more than a year, then it's a vote. But to help you with this vacancy thing, look at the maps before and look at the maps now.
Just a moment, Mr. Jones. Could you give us a minute just to catch up with
Sure.
you? So in your petition, you've alleged that you didn't allege in your petition, and I'm not holding that against you, and I don't want you to feel as though we're going to hold that against you, but just for the sake of understanding, what you just explained is not in the written part of your petition. Is that correct?
That is correct, because when I was thinking when this was done, it was done more than a year.
That's fair. And so tell me again which part of Section 7 that you were just citing, if the vacancy is less than a year.
If the Article 7, Section 7A, and then the 1.
Okay, that's 7A. Would you like to respond, Speaker Baker?
I would, if it pleased the court.
Yes.
In that rationale, then if he filed his petition January the 23rd, which was filed, then it would have been less than a year. So by his own petition, he could not have sought the remedy that he is asking because he filed it with less than a year.
Well, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Mr. Jones is now disputing that. I think Mr. Jones is saying that 7A should apply, not 7B.
Exactly.
I'll just read.
I should have put both of them.
I'll
on
just
there.
read Section 7A. And I'm not trying to catch you in that, Mr. Jones. I don't think that we are bound to limit just to what you've stated here as your remedy. I believe you're allowed now to seek 7A as
I would like to
possible remedy.
comment on this too.
Okay,
The council is afforded a $5,000 a month lawyer, and they still got this wrong. I'm by myself.
which,
They get to have an attorney with them all the times. I'm by myself, so I apologize. Apologize, Mr. Speaker, that I didn't put 7A instead of 7B.
and in fairness, I think one of the reasons why the Constitution was written to include lawyers and non-lawyers in this court was to be considerate of that, Mr. Jones. And this court will be entirely considerate of that. I'll just read 7A. If a tribal council seat becomes vacant for any reason and 1 calendar year or less remains in the term of that vacant seat, then subsection 1 or I. The tribal council shall schedule, advertise, and conduct a public hearing in the district with the vacant seat for the purpose of receiving nominations from district residents to fill the vacancy. Then elect as council member for the vacant seat from among those individuals nominated at the public hearing by a 2/3 vote of the tribal council. Subsection II. If no candidate described in above is nominated or qualified to serve, the tribal council shall appoint a person who would be qualified to stand for election to that seat to serve the remainder of the term. And it's your position here tonight that if this court were to find that a vacancy exists, that would be the remedy.
That's correct, sir.
Would you agree with that, Speaker Baker, that if this court tonight finds that a vacancy exists, that is the remedy that the court should apply? Or would it be your position that even if the court finds that there is a vacancy, that the court still should not impose a measure to hold either a special election or hold this public hearing because it would require the removal of existing tribal council members from the council?
I do not believe one branch should exert authority over the other, so this court is a branch of this government of its own. So I wouldn't try to tell you one way or another how to render your verdict. I would say that, you know, we spent a lot of time on 7A and I, but you really need to look at the whole paragraph of 7 as, does the Constitution define what a vacancy is? And I believe 7 does define what a vacancy is. Any council member who is absent from 3 consecutive regular scheduled meetings of the council shall be removed from office, provided the absences are unexcused in accordance with the governing tribal ordinance. A vacancy in tribal council seat will also occur. So obviously, removal for failure to attend 3 consecutives is seen by this Constitution as a vacancy. And then it said a second will occur upon the death of a tribal council member or the occurrence during which a member's term of any circumstance listed above in section 2 would have disqualified the member from serving upon tribal council. So that's the definition of vacancy, to then look down below and see when a vacancy occurs what the proper remedy is.
What do you say to that, Mr. Jones?
I have 2 things to say.
Okay.
Back to, if the maps were drawn correctly, it would be easy to show who the person is in that vacant seat next door to it. But the way the maps are drawn, it would be difficult. That's why they didn't put a person's name in there. But second, it says for any reason. For any reason. It doesn't say for any reason above, below. It says for any reason. And if those maps were drawn like they should have been drawn, It would have been easy to possibly have vacant seats like they've got, but someone next door, and they could have easily put their name in it to the next election.
Let's take a short recess. It's been an hour. It's 8 o'clock. Let's take a 10 to 15-minute recess.
All rise.
You may be seated. I want to restate on the record that, I think this has been acknowledged by Mr. Jones, and I believe it was acknowledged by the Speaker, that for this court to make a decision that a tribal seat is vacant and that there should be some steps going forward to fill that vacancy, that this court first has to be convinced fully that a vacancy exists. Speaker Baker, before the break, you made the statement that you did not believe that a vacancy exists because the Constitution defines what a vacancy is. And when you answered that question, you said that, I think it's Article 7, Section 7. Article 7, Section 7. And you read that any council member who is absent from 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings of the council shall be removed from office, provided that such absences are unexcused in accordance with governing tribal ordinance. You then went on to continue to read that said that a vacancy also occurs automatically upon the death of a tribal council member or the occurrence during the member's term of any circumstance listed above in Section 2. That would have disqualified the member from serving upon the council. And you read that. I really thought, Mr. Jones, that you would have jumped on that and said, there's your vacancy. There's a lot of words when you read in the Constitution, and things don't really just jump out at you really quickly. And so I'm gonna go back to you, Speaker Baker, and I'm gonna ask, as it relates to that, when it says that a tribal council member, a vacancy occurs, or the occurrence during that member's term of any circumstance listed above in Section 2 that would have disqualified the member from serving upon the tribal council. To me, that's plain language that says, if this person could not have ran for that tribal council seat at the time of that election, this person is now disqualified from remaining in that district seat. Is that your reading of that?
My reading of that is particularly with the Section C that gave the authority to enact an ordinance governing the disqualification from tribal council due to a felony conviction, because that had not been determined at that time, and it left an open reading to determine what the will of the council after the founders and drafters of this Constitution did not grapple and answer that question.
Well, if you read, let's just look at it word for word. A vacancy in a tribal council seat will also occur automatically upon the death of a tribal council member. We're not dealing with that, thankfully. And then it says, or the occurrence during that member's term of any circumstance listed above in Section 2 that would have disqualified the member from serving upon the tribal council. Which tells me we go to Section 2. Section 2 says, except as otherwise provided, members of the tribal council shall serve 3-year terms, and no council member can serve more than 2 consecutive terms. The privilege to run for election to the tribal council shall be limited to those members of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina who, at the commencement of their term of office for which the member stands for election, subsection A, are of the age of 21. Subsection B, have maintained their principal place of residence in the particular council district for which the member stands for election no less than the preceding 1 year. I would like for you to make an argument to the court why section 2, subsection B would not be an occurrence that is mentioned in section 7 that would disqualify a member from running,
Certainly.
if you're able.
Certainly. As again stated in our early arguments, that the landmass, not the resident, changed. So the person running for tribal council fulfilled their requirement, lived in this district for the preceding year prior to the district in which they were eligible to run. The member did not move. The district has moved. And so we did not feel at the time in this reading that the member had moved and should be penalized when the council as a whole moved the territory and not the member.
So as your argument would be that section 2, subsection B only applies when a member of the tribal council moves.
That would be, that was our reading, and that was our deliberation and debate, is that this speaks to they had to live in the principal residence a year prior. All members that were seated had fulfilled that requirement. Yes, sir.
You would not dispute, though, that at the commencement of an election in one of these new districts, one of these current tribal council members currently representing that district, you would not dispute that they are not able to run in that district in the new election.
That would be a call for the election board, but I do think that would be an appropriate reading in this instance.
Any thoughts, Mr. Jones, as it relates to the questions that I've asked Speaker Baker?
I've spoken to people that live in there's people here in District 21, and they don't know who their representative is. Plainly says that they got to be represented, and if they'd have done the maps correctly, there would probably been a council member in the area that could represent that lived in that area. But they chose not to. Not one council member lives in any of those districts. That's hard for me to believe, and that leaves unrepresentation.
Well, the question is Speaker Baker is saying that a vacancy has not been created simply because they no longer live in that district. And he's saying that because the reason why they no longer live in that district is not because they've uprooted their home and they've moved, but because the district around them has changed. And the question that I'm asking you is can you articulate why section 2, subsection B should be used to create the vacancy in which you're arguing that there's a vacancy? Can you articulate or argue to the court why section 2B does not apply? Speaker Baker has given a reason why 2B would not apply.
I do have to make the comment. You said Article what?
Article 7, section 2, subsection B. And that's in response to section 7,
Right.
that says, or the occurrence during that member's term of any circumstance listed above in section 2 that would have disqualified the member from sitting upon the tribal council. Can you make the argument that that is an occurrence as listed in Article 7?
It says any. And they drew it. They created the mess.
I think in fairness to the council, Mr. Jones, there hasn't been a determination yet that it's a mess. I realize that you've made that statement a number of times, and I don't think that it's fair to the council to use that, because at this point, it's duly adopted tribal law. It's been passed by the legislature, it's been signed by the chairman. This court has not made any determination that it is illegal or unconstitutional. It's a very subjective remark to say that it's a mess. And this court shows great deference to your zeal as it relates to how you feel about it, but I believe that it's disrespectful to the council to keep calling it a mess when there's been no legal findings or any determination that would deem it such.
Well, how do you explain a council member who's up for election, but her district, the district she's in, is not up for election?
Could you restate that?
On the elections board page, in 2025, Miss Christy Revels is up for election. At this present time, she's in District 20. But if you look, 20 is not up for election, only the vacant seats. And she's not in any of those districts.
Well, I think Speaker Baker has answered that question, or at least provided an answer to that question. He has stated that he does not believe that she would be allowed to run in District 21, or whichever district that she is currently representing.
Furthermore, the petitioner would need to seek relief from the elections board. I believe it's misguided to come here and hold the tribal council accountable for an independent electoral board's conduct, rulings, and determinations. If the petitioner really feels sincerely about that, then his grievance is with the election board, not this sitting council. Don't determine, Your Honor, who's up for re-election.
My response, Mr. Jones, to the argument that you're making is that Miss Christy Revels currently resides in District 20, the new District 20. But because District 20 is not up for re-election, she can't seek a election in that district until there is a new election in that district. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
Yes, that's one of them, yes.
Speaker Baker, I understand that there's districts 15, 17, and 21. Those are the districts that are labeled vacant on the tribal website. Those are the districts that you have agreed that there's currently no sitting tribal council members who reside in those districts. Can you give us the names of the persons who are representing those districts?
Certainly,
We'll
Your
begin
Honor.
with 15.
Yes, sir. Certainly, Your Honor. So currently, we have Mr. Gerald Goolsby, who resides in District 2, along with Mr. Graylin Mitchell. We have Miss Pam Hunt, who resides in District 3, along with Mr. Harold Smith.
She would represent 17.
They reside in District 3 currently.
Your statement?
I would have to call a witness that could speak to
Okay.
that. I'm not as versed to that, but Mr. Matt Roller, our assistant
Okay.
here, or either the tribal administrator could help identify those, as they were key and critical in helping us draw those
If you
maps.
have a witness, feel free to call them that you believe can answer that question.
I'd call it this time Mr. Matt Roller.
Okay. Mr. Matt, I'll affirm you. If you'll
Yes,
raise
sir.
your right hand. Will you state your name?
Matt Roller.
Mr. Roller, do you affirm that the testimony that you now give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Or he's your witness, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Roller, can you help identify what council members currently represent District 15, 17, and 21 for the court, please, sir?
Yes, sir. I believe 17 is our Maxton area, so that would have been Joe Doss and Larry Souls represented those districts previously. The way the old maps were drawn, Dollar Bill may have had some of the members that reside in that district. 15 would have been the old map of 14, 21, 2, 3, so that would have been Pam and Harold. Mr. Homer would have had some of those people. I believe one took some of 15, so Dollar Bill would have had a few of those people. And then 21 would have probably been Pam Homer, because that would have sat in that old district of 3. I believe some of that might have even been a little of Miss Kathy Hunt. I apologize. It's hard without having a map in front of me, but I'm going based off of our previous old maps.
Yeah.
But each council member had with the old maps, they were all represented. So when you went to the new 21 districts, I believe, like Mr. Baker said, we're referring to the landmass, not the member. So everybody in that landmass had a representation from a previous council member.
It's not an easy question to answer, Mr. Rowland. I apologize because I thought that the answer would be much simpler. It seemed to me that the person who was representing each of these districts was just, that every person now in District 21 was previously represented by one person. But it appears that those districts, because of the way that they were drawn, previously consisted of multiple districts.
That is quite possible, Your Honor, yes.
And so the ordinance is written in a way that for a person to know who their existing representative is, or yes, for the person to know who their current representative is, they simply look at who the person was that they elected in the previous election.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And that's probably the easiest way to
That was
define.
the easiest way that they can define it.
And that still does not change the fact that that person, although the council contends that they're represented, they're not represented by someone currently who resides in their tribal district, and that's still your point of contention, Mr. Jones.
Yes, and some.
Speaker Baker, if this court were to make a determination that a vacancy exists because of the redistricting that was drawn in a way that left out persons in districts 15, 17, and 21, but from being represented by persons residing in those districts, can you make an argument to this court why filling those district seats prior to November would be the right course of action?
I would need guidance on which members of council lose their current seats, and if this court now revises its stance on a term, the definition of a term.
So your position is that there cannot be a determination for persons to take seats in districts 15, 17, and 21 without at least 3 members on the tribal council losing their seats.
That is correct. You'll violate, you'll have 24 if you just add 3 more. Constitution says there'll be 21.
And your position, Mr. Jones, is that you believe that it would be justifiable to remove 3 council members from their seats in order to fill those seats.
If those council members don't reside in those areas, they voted on that. Yes.
What would be the, how do you think that should happen? What determination would determine who would make the determination which tribal council members should be removed?
Their own body.
You've heard Speaker Baker's argument that the Constitution does not grant the tribal council the authority to remove a tribal council member apart from Article 7, Section 7, that says that they shall be removed if they miss 3 unexcused absences from tribal council meeting. Speaker Baker's point to that then would be is that it would be unconstitutional for them to remove members within their own council. Would you dispute that?
I don't read it that way. I'm not reading.
Okay. Tell us how you Tell us why you believe they would have the constitutional authority to remove members of their own council. Or would you not see it as removal?
I have to say, Judge, I'm not here to decide on how they're coming off. I'm saying that it's unconstitutional what they've done. I'm afraid if I say how they take them off, that might be unconstitutional. But
Yeah.
things have done, they've done. That's why I brought up other things before. Things have been done. It wasn't exactly like this. People have taught, what do you want, Mr. Johns?
Yeah.
I just want fair representation for the people. Whether you got to put someone in it, appoint or vote on someone, or if you got to redo the maps. We got to have fair representation of the people.
Would you recognize, though, the difficulty in the court in validating something as unconstitutional and enacting a remedy that in itself may be unconstitutional? If this court makes a determination that elections or special hearings need to be conducted to put 3 new council persons in those 3 seats, and that would require the removal of 3 seats, and if that removal would be unconstitutional, should this court be concerned about replacing one thing that's unconstitutional for another?
Are you saying it's unconstitutional?
I'm not saying it because that's not the question that's before us, but the court, in providing a remedy, has to be certain that the remedy that we provide is not one that's going to be out of step with the Constitution.
Maybe we have to find a remedy that's not. It's going to be tough. This is tough. That's why this community is just tough.
Can you make the argument then that there's a basis for special hearings to allow for persons to be nominated and appointed to those districts and allow all the other remaining tribal district members to remain on through November? Can a case be made for that? Can you make a case for that? Would you be willing to make a case for that? And that would be...
Are we talking about 24 active?
That would be Gerald Goolsby, Pam Hunt, and Christy Hunt. Is that correct? Can a case be made that they are able to remain on the tribal council through November or through January, and a special hearing be conducted to appoint representatives in those 3 districts?
That's a tough question you're asking me, because are those people going to be in their district? You're saying like it is right now.
If we implemented a remedy that allowed for section, and I think in your petition you alleged section 7B, and then upon a second opportunity review you said section 7 subsection A. And section 7 subsection A says that if there is less than a year remaining in that term, that a special hearing is conducted, that the tribal council shall schedule, advertise, and conduct a public hearing in the district with the vacant seat for the purpose of receiving nominations from district residents to fill the vacancy. Okay? So if this court were to enact a remedy that would allow a special hearing to be conducted for 3 persons in those districts, 15, 17, and 21. Would you be opposed to that happening and Representatives Pam Hunt, Christy Hunt, and Mr. Gerald Goolsby remaining in their districts through November? And I acknowledge that that would leave us with 24 tribal members at some point. But I also say that recognizing that this tribal council has not really been entirely in compliance with the tribal constitution for 20 years, and according to you, still isn't. And so I'm asking, recognizing that there's some difference here. And maybe that's a little Solomon in me that's thinking, trying to find a baby. What's your response to that, Speaker Baker?
My response is, you're absolutely right, Your Honor. The court instructed a tribal council that the petitioner was a part of to withdraw back in 2018. This is a very difficult thing that councils have thrown out the baby with the bathwater because they've not been able to do that. Regardless of the process and people's feelings about hastiness and a mess, this council deliberated for a very long time on how to fulfill our role, in which we already found ourselves when I came on 2023, 5 years late to a Supreme Court order. So yes, I took it seriously. Yes, we worked on this a very long time. I take our separation of powers seriously, and I take my oath when I swore to uphold the Constitution. And so as of yet, what we have applied and the way we found was that we honored Lumbee custom. In section 9 of the Article 9, excuse me, under judiciary, there are 3 acceptable rules of law to be applied: Constitution, federal, and Lumbee custom. And so we applied Lumbee custom here, that we found that previous councils, after having moved out of their district, they actually changed their residence and they were not removed. In this instance, no tribal council member moved their residence, but the district moved from them through no fault. And so it was either remove a duly elected representative and transgress when we lack that authority, or uphold custom and tribal law that allowed for those members to still maintain representation, as well as adhere to the one man, one rule as expressed by the Constitution when considering redistricting. And so we did our best due diligence to honor that, to keep it within our role and responsibility while completing an instruction from this court received in 2018 to redistrict.
What one person would call hasty, you would call efficient. You would say that the council was...
I believe in being effective and efficient as being a government employee all my life. Part of what I see as our role and responsibility is effective and efficiency.
In fairness, though, the parallel that you've used about Lumbee custom, to use the argument that you've made, you could very well say that it became Lumbee custom to operate out of 14 tribal districts because we had done it for so long.
And there is consideration that perhaps while we redraft this Constitution that we look at that. There has been some consideration brought forth about reducing council, about reducing sizes, and things of that nature. But right now, with what I have before me and the court cases and the court instructions that I have, I don't get to cherry pick which ones I like and which one I don't.
Would you agree, though, that Lumbee custom only comes into play when this court cannot find an answer out of the Constitution?
I think that is a fair statement, as the Constitution covers a broad range of things, but Lumbee custom is more detailed.
And so if the court found that what Mr. Jones has presented amounts to a vacancy in the Constitution, this court should not rely on Lumbee custom, but should rely entirely on the Constitution as it relates to its definitions and applications of vacancy. Would you agree with that?
But this court gets a privilege that the council does not. You get to interpret the Constitution. The council does not get to interpret. That is your role and responsibility. We're to draft clear, concise legislation. And so absent of some kind of instruction or interpretation thereof, I only have the reading to rely on.
You wouldn't say that the council is drafting ordinances in tribal law without considering the Constitution.
No, the basis that we look to is the Constitution.
You would consider the Constitution, and you would pass ordinances that you believe are constitutional.
And we have done so in this instance,
And
yes,
so
Your Honor.
you would be interpreting tribal law when you're passing tribal law, because you wouldn't knowingly pass legislation that you believe violated the Constitution.
That's correct. But I do not get to determine or define vacancy in this instance, as that is solely what,
That
that's
point,
your prerogative.
that point is noted. But to the more specific question that was presented to Mr. Jones. If this court were to make a ruling that the remedy would be to allow a special hearing in each one of these districts and allow council members Goolsby, Hunt, and, well, Miss Christie Hunt and Miss Pam Hunt to serve out the remainder of their terms, what would be the council's reaction to that?
I have not had a chance to poll my counsel at this particular point, so I would err if I tried to predict what they may feel or what they may say.
Other justices, any thoughts or questions or comments?
But what I do think, Your Honor, if I may, is it would be hard for some of them to reconcile how then, you know, we did not violate, or that order does not violate the Constitution in and of itself, when it's clear that we only to be a 21-member body.
That is noted, and that this court takes that very seriously, which is why I asked the question to Mr. Jones about this court making a ruling that would constructively remove 3 council members without any constitutional authority that's been pointed to us that we could do that. And this court certainly does not want to overstep its authority in removing any person where it believes that it does not have the authority to do so. For if we were, that would certainly open up a broad spectrum of creating a precedent. This court may or may not have the authority to do that, and that is not the question that's before us. You may have said this earlier, Speaker Baker, but is it also your argument as it relates to vacancy, that vacancy does not apply because these were newly established territories and they were not previously represented by anyone for that matter? And because they were not previously represented by anyone for that matter, the fact that they are not currently represented by persons who reside in that district is not a vacancy. Is that clear or unclear? Should I rephrase that?
I think that is definitely an argument that one could make, and I could see where that would be the leaning or the inquiry of this court. All I can speak is the deliberations that I have been part of and that I heard. This council never seen them as a vacancy again because, yes, the member did not move, but the landmass moved. And so with that rationale, then you're quite absolutely right in that thinking that there was never a vacancy because there was never an office holder to begin with in that sense. But the council chose to leave those individuals who were representing the landmass prior to the creation of the territory because, again, we were concerned with one man, one vote, and ensuring that members did have someone they could turn to.
Would it have been possible to have drafted this legislation with a triggering date or an enaction date that, as of the date of the swearing in of the new council member, that is the date that district took effect?
And, you know, this is why a lot's been said tonight and leading up to this about us having an attorney. And that is one of the reasons why we need a competent attorney. I've heard the court say tonight about having 2 attorneys and 3 lay people, and that's by design. All of us in council, unlike most legislatures, none of us are practicing attorneys. In most of your legislatures or your legislative body, a great deal of your elected representatives are legal scholars and judges or attorneys. And that's because crafting legislation can be difficult when you're asking to foresee these actions. And so we did employ an attorney. Unfortunately, that was not the recommendation or the advisement of our attorney. And so unfortunately, we did not have that remedy available to us at that time. Currently, we're without an attorney. I just want that on the record.
Yes, Speaker. Mr. Jones, would you like to respond?
No.
Okay. Any questions from my left or my right?
I would like to say this.
Okay.
I didn't want to say it, but I do. That is why we're supposed to have committee meetings to get feedback from the community. I don't think 2 months is called efficient. I don't think on this particular thing. Other things took over 2 years to start a online store with the council. 2 years. But in 2 months, I just don't call that efficient. But we could dig in. If we could dig into that, you could see that it wasn't efficient. But I think it just could have been done better. It's a tough decision we got to make.
Yeah.
3 districts is not getting representation.
I want to say something, and I think it's right to say. I want to acknowledge, Mr. Jones, that I believe that your zeal comes from a faithful place to the Lumbee people. And I think that you've demonstrated that in large parts tonight. There's some things that I've probably disagreed with the way that you said them. But I don't believe that they came from a bad place. I believe that you're here because I believe that you're well-meaning, and I believe that you love your tribe, and I believe that you care deeply about the direction of the tribe and the way that the tribe operates. And I know that sometimes that stirs persons the wrong way, but I believe in that respect, I believe that you're faithful. And I also believe that the council has acted in good faith in responding to the court's order, these justices' order, to enact a 21 tribal council district. Certainly, we could debate about whether or not it's been done hastily or efficiently or effectively. Ultimately, your voters will hold you accountable if they feel that it's been done hastily or inefficiently or ineffectively or dismissive of their thoughts and their opinions and how that they believe that this tribal government should be run. And thankfully, that's why we have a democratic process. I want to invite both of you to make a closing argument at this time that this court will take very seriously in deliberation. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Jones.
Constitution says that we have to have representation for the people. On the website of the tribe and elections board, they both use the word vacant. There's people that do not know who their representation is based on this. Constitution says for any reason that there's a vacancy, things have to happen, and it's explained. I think we should stick with the Constitution. This is setting precedent for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Speaker Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor. Article 7, Section 3 of the Constitution establishes a 21-member tribal council elected from districts within and throughout the tribal territory. Article 7, Section 3 also requires that these districts be withdrawn within a year after decennial federal census to maintain equal representation for tribal membership. While the tribe has struggled with how to do this successfully for 24 years, this council has finally been able to put forth a plan. This plan is duly enacted by tribal council now seated, along with our tribal administration to include the chairman and his staff, in order to maintain compliance with the Constitution and ensure equal representation to the tribal membership. The districts continue the 21 individual representation, which changed from 14 to being compliant as required by the tribal constitution. And now each district, this resolves the controversy that we faced with multiple people representing one district. This now resolves those controversies, one person, one district, what a term is, and then the consecutive vote. These maps did leave 3 districts without members residing in those districts. However, the ordinance made clear that such a member is represented by the representative that they were elected in that prior election. The term of the council member holding over from the unrepresented districts ensures that those districts are represented until their term expires. All 3 that is in question will be resolved without anybody being illegally removed or breaking the 21 district come November this fall with elections. The tribal council contends that there are no vacancies, that the members did not move or commit a felony or be removed because they failed to miss 3 seats. This is a geographical realign and not a realignment of individuals. And so, absent of having the authority, the Constitution, we did our due diligence, and we do not see that a vacancy exists. And for those reasons, we would ask this court to uphold this ordinance.
Thank you, Speaker. We're going to take a recess. The court's going to enter into deliberation.
All rise.
You may be seated. We want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Sometimes hearings can take a lot out of you. Sometimes you can ask a lot of questions and you open up questions that you didn't foresee. And I think in some sense that's happened tonight, which is good because that's why we wanted to have a hearing. There were certain things that we weren't quite sure of. There were certain allegations that were made that we didn't know if they were true or untrue, and we did not want to presume. We did not want to make a determination that a hearing was not needed based on things that we were not sure of. And so at the very least, we do believe that this hearing has helped shore up some issues as it relates to this currently adopted legislation as it relates to the 21 tribal district territory. With that said, we don't believe that it's wise or fair to keep you any longer tonight because we believe that it's going to be impossible for us to render a decision this evening. This is the first time, I believe, in probably 3 years that we have had a full court. We've had 5 members on the court. I'm very thankful for that. I think that it is a blessing to this court as well as to the tribal government that to have a full deck here on the court. And so we thank the tribal council for that, as well as the chairman. With that said, we are going to adjourn this and we are going to deliberate amongst ourselves. And we're going to try to come to a conclusion within a short, reasonable time, I would imagine within the next week, and issue a ruling to both parties. For that matter, this meeting is adjourned.
All rise.